Hello, everyone. Welcome to the HVAC 2.0 show. I'm Nate Adams, CEO of HVAC 2.0, and joined by a bunch of the guild here. So we have Reedy and Tanner and Jeff and Ken, and then, of course, old TK, who is our resident drill sergeant. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the IRA heat pump tax incentives. And are they really up to 14 grand? And what do you really need to know? Because I don't know if anyone else has found this, but the information that I have seen on this subject has felt lacking pretty much the whole time. Just like light on detail and kind of cheerleader-ish, like rah-rah, shish boom bah, and like, but where's the meat? So we're going to try and put some flesh around this, although ironically, the details that we know about the program are still not that great, but we've had enough time now to consider how to deal with the structure of it and do our best to make the best of it, because it is a very imperfect structure, frankly, in how it's built. So, all right, well, let's just dig right in. So I wanted to start with the prime directive of HVAC 2.0. So like we are a very different way to sell HVAC that lets you solve any problem predictably and profitably with entry-level talents, from the very easy stuff to the really hard. So it's building science-based. But our prime directive through all of this, our true north, is we want to be sure to deliver excellent experiences for both contractors and homeowners. So you can do one side or the other and then hose the opposite side. Like that's not that difficult, but serving both of them very well at the same time is very, very challenging. And we found requires a very specific path and process, considering the level of complexity that the system's capable of. So we spent all this time doing all of this, and then the structure of the IRA comes out and it makes this very, very difficult. And if it makes it difficult with a carefully thought out system that naturally bends towards electrification, if you're not careful how you use this, the odds of getting bit in the butt and having expensive callbacks and just no fun at all for either side are very high. So we're going to discuss how to reduce at least some of that risk tonight.
When that happens, it becomes the Income Reduction Act.
Yeah, there's already enough discussion about that. To be clear, like we've been pro-electrification for a long time. I'll get to it later, but we pulled our first gas meter in 2014 before it made sense. Modulating variable speed, communicating heat pumps are hands down the best way to deliver excellent client comfort. And it's the best way to deliver good humidity control, air quality, all of these other things. It's the best way. Choose your backup heat of choice. So that could be electric resistance, could be gas, could be propane, whatever. But a variable speed, modulating, communicating heat pump is the best way to get that done. So we are very pro heat pump, but we are not pro this program. But again, we'll try and show how to dodge things. So here's the key takeaways. You want to filter the leads that come in. If somebody says that they would like to take advantage, you want to understand what their motivations are. So we're going to talk about how to do that and what to look for. The state programs, to be frank, looking through them all, they probably aren't worth chasing. It's going to be 50 sets of rules. The rules are kind of a pain in the neck about them. You have to do advanced modeling, or there needs to be a third-party inspection, and it's all income stuff. So I don't know. We'll dive a little deeper, but I don't know that those are going to be worth chasing. Those are going to go to a couple of companies that specialize in that, not necessarily HVAC contractors. So when you take away the state programs, if you've seen any of the PR on this, they're like up to $14,000. You take away the state programs, it's $2,000. Now it is $2,000 a year. So, you could do a water heater this year and a heat pump next, or vice versa, or whatever, but it's $2,000 a year. And that goes through the end of 2031 or the beginning of 2032, depending on the program. And then the other really key takeaway on this is cover your butt on dehumidification. offer ventilating dehumidifiers. Time to get familiar with those things. I would look particularly at Santa Fe because they have the longest warranty at 6 years. Note that that's considerably shorter than a 10-year on most systems. So there will probably be 2 of them in the lifespan of a system. So generally what we think is going to happen is people are going to cheap out, buy a piece of equipment that doesn't dehumidify well, then have to buy a dehumidifier. And because it's unlikely to last the full life of that system, they will buy 2 dehumidifiers. So they will save $2,000 and then spend $6 to $10,000 twice to put in a dehu. So not necessarily the best way, but cover your butt on this so that you don't pay for that dehumidifier. So here's what we're going to go through tonight. We're going to talk about what we know, like capital K, no. We'll look at the 3 programs. 1 is federal, 2 are state. We'll talk about how to filter clients. We'll talk about what equipment qualifies, and then we'll take questions. So, and we'll do our best with what we know. So speaking of what we know, I was on IAQ radio back in October, and I waited a couple of months after the launch of the bill to try and understand if more details would come through. Here we are 7 months after that, about 9 months after the bill hit. We still don't know very much. So we do understand what equipment qualifies. CEE, the Consortium for Energy Efficiency, they revised their tiers. So they used to have 3 tiers, and the bill is pegged to whatever the highest tier is, short of the advanced tier. They went from 3 tiers to 1. Which that was in the works before all this went through, to be fair. So it's not like it was something special. And excuse me, I have been fighting allergies real bad today. But as far as what it looks like in taxes, we don't really know yet. So we'll have to see exactly what the IRS rules will be. We don't have those just yet. States have up to 2 years to start these programs. The bill was passed August of last year, which means they have until August of 2024 to actually launch programs. And we're not hearing of anyone actually having something up and running before next year. And the thing that stinks on this is the PR's been, you can get all this money. It's going to be great. Ask your contractors. The programs don't exist. They're not going to exist for a while. So I don't know. It's not a pleasant situation to be put in where you have to start the relationship with bad news. By the way, I will put a link in here, and I've got it at the end as well, but I'll put a link in the video description. I pulled out all the sections of the bill and then annotated them so you can read through what my notes were. Okay, second part, 3 programs, 1 federal, 2 state. Here's what they are. So they are all 10-year programs in theory, but the state programs have a limited amount of money, so they will run out almost for sure by the time we get there. And the federal incentives, it begins January of this year, so it's technically running right now. There is no budget cap on it. So as many systems as can be installed with this, or windows or furnaces or doors and a bunch of other things, will get either the $1,200 or $2,000 a year. We'll look more detail in a moment. The state programs, again, they have up to 2 years to begin. Here's the real kicker on these. It's state by state. So we're going to have 50 sets of rules. They're all going to be a little bit different. So there are no blanket statements that can be made about the state IRA programs. So that's going to be annoying. So wherever you are, you're going to be like, well, we can do this here. And it's going to be the classic thing. Like, it always cracks me up when somebody puts up a picture of a really nice looking HVAC install, and then it gets torn to shreds. And at least half the comments are things that are coded in one area, but not in another. We're going to have that same kind of issue here. So there's 2 different pieces of it. There's Hope for Homes, which is a $4.3 billion budget. And that gives you either $2,000 or $4,000 off the cost of an upgrade. So be that just HVAC or HVAC and shell or whatever it might be involved. The lower amount is 20 to 35% modeled or actual savings. The higher amount is 35% modeled or actual savings. There's a whole bunch more details on this for multifamily, low income, a bunch of other pieces that I talk about at IAQ Radio. And the other program is the High Efficiency Electric Homes Program, which is $4.5 billion. This is the one that everybody's talking about because it's up to $14,000 for various upgrades. And the big one is up to $8,000 for a heat pump system. The curse of this is it's income qualified. It's tied to median income, which goes through HUD, I believe, Housing and Urban Resources Development. And that is between, it's under 80% for one set of rules, and then it's 80 to 150% for another set of rules. And if your head is beginning to spin, yeah, that's how it goes. Remember how I said this is probably not worth chasing? This also requires individual inspections, separate inspections. Oh, by the way, and you cannot double dip the two state programs. You can use federal and one of the states. So that is on the table. From how the bill's written, we still have yet to see the rules. So the federal tax credit, let's look at this in a little more detail. It is presently $1,500 maximum lifetime. This goes back to like 06, or maybe it was 04. Like it goes back quite a while. And that was 10 to 30% of various job costs. So I used this back when I had an installation contracting company from 2010 through 2013. And it could be somewhat useful there. But this was also annoying that it was technically just material cost. So you had to tell the client what your labor and material costs were. That was not a fun conversation to break that stuff out. So at least we don't have those things here. So now it is $1,200 per year maximum. And that is 30% of the job cost period. So we're not splitting out labor and materials. It's just the job cost. Now that's $1,200 for everything, but heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, which are $2,000 per year. And this is per year. So you could do a heat pump this year, a heat pump water heater next year. If you've got multiple systems, you could do that 1 year at a time. Now, the bad part of that is if you have waited 2 years to buy equipment, what has your price done? It's been a really painful time to buy HVAC. Equipment prices are up 50% ballpark. Labor prices are out of control. Like everything is just wild. And we've seen price increases on materials that are eating up a good chunk of this $2,000 already. So
inflation reduction, though.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, there are a bunch of other pieces in this, in the clean energy side, that I think are a good idea. They're going to work on onshoring things and actually decreasing our overall cost of energy and increasing energy independence. There's a bunch of good pieces of this bill that I actually like. But everything that applies to us, no, not a big fan. This is a tax credit for the federal. So it is not at time of sale. It happens with next year's return, and it requires tax liability. Translation, only well-to-do clients can wait, a year for $2,000 to come back. So this is not very low income friendly. There was discussion of it being stackable. So I asked a few questions on Twitter of some people that worked on designing the bill. And in theory, you're supposed to be able to stack. So it wouldn't actually be a $2,000 cap. It would be more. So you could do multiple projects in the same year and stack it. That is not how the bill reads. Apparently that was the intention. So we just have to wait for the rules to come out and find out. If that's the case, that'll be nice. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck splitting up jobs and doing multiple truck rolls and dealing with all that and the friction of multiple transactions. So that's less than ideal, but maybe it'll be useful.
Well, it's a good thing they can get $2,000 because they'll need it. So that way they can add it back into paying for all the additional crap that you've got to use to get them this amazing tax credit to begin with.
I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Man, it's obnoxious. Oh, well. So here's some more stuff on it. For heat pumps, it's $2,000. Now, this is not heat pump only systems. This applies to hybrids. And I am one of the people you have to thank for that, to be frank. I push back hard on that part. So I'm glad that made it in there. There is no backup fuel requirement on this, at least as I've seen. Maybe it'll enter in the rules yet. But you do have to get CEE Tier 1, which is currently 15.2 SEER 2. We're going to go into more details in a little bit. Jeff's going to dive in. And we don't know for sure, but it's really likely to require an RE match. So keep good track of what your RE matches are. Get used to a few systems that you normally sell. Be aware of what those are.
I read a post today, Nate, on that topic. Somebody said that in their locale, the only way they could get an AHRI match for a new heat pump was to replace the furnace along with it. If their furnace was a few years old, it didn't match with the current equipment.
Yep. No, that's absolutely correct. I mean, there are no RE matches when you are mismatching brands or models. So yeah, it's going to require the whole system to happen. So the $2,000, and I hadn't fully thought about that, but like a Bosch, like I have on this house, or an EcoAir, or all of these hybrid heat systems that are coming out. If you're stacking that on top of a existing single stage furnace, the tax credit's out the window because you can't get an RE match. I mean, it's maybe there'll be an exception, but I wouldn't count on it. I'm not putting any of my money on it. That's for sure. Now, the one that might be useful are heat pump water heaters, which is $2,000, and that's 30% of job cost. So you got to be a little over $6,000 before you get the whole thing. But all current products that I am aware of qualify because it requires a 3.25 COP, and the products on the market are between 3.5 and 4. So this is a doable thing. Now, one of the curses here is I'm a huge electrification fan, but the last generation of heat pump water heaters has sucked. They are noisy and they fail early, but aside from that, they're great, which is a bummer because they were all going in the right direction for a long time. And then Rheem in particular took a big step backwards, and all of the other ones seemed like they got noisier too. I'm curious to see the new A.O. Smith. Looks like it's dead silent. So we'll see how that goes. But get one of these and put it in your own house to begin, and make sure you're comfortable with it. They're a useful product. I've got 2 of them, and they're both too noisy. But I have them both in our living space because we happen to have 2 houses. That's where they have to end up. But anyway, this may be useful because it's just kind of a straight up thing. Everything else is up to $1,200 a year. So 2 key things to note are windows are up to $600. And again, that's 30% of job cost. So that's not going to do that much on a window job. And exterior doors, it's $250 each, up to $500. And I didn't put it on here, but furnaces are in here. So there's some other stuff going on as well. But that's the federal. This hopefully will have some utility to us in the industry, but just got to watch your P's and Q's. Now, the state programs, Hope for Homes, rebates for modeled or actual energy savings, like I said, $2,000 to $4,000. And this varies on income level, whether it's 50% or 100% up to of the job. And multifamily has different rules. Like it's kind of complicated. Again, I covered it on the IAQ radio episode. High efficiency electric homes, or the HERA Act. So this is rebates for the individual measures. Like I said, up to $8,000 for heat pumps. Third-party inspections or certifications are required for these. So that's going to add some friction that you're going to have to pay somebody or a program or whatever to certify that the install was good. All of these require income verification. And so this is a whole nother thing. Let's say I think about my brother when we were riding along with one of my dad's clients restoring antique cars. He looks at the client. He's like, "Mr. Wessel, how much money do you have?" And that was just such an awkward moment. And he did have a kind reply. He said, "More than enough, more than enough. I'll be all right." But having to add this friction in here is not really that pleasant. Hopefully the states will do some automated income verification before you get there, or you can ignore the programs. There are huge unknowns with these. Again, 50 different sets of rules, different requirements. They have up to 2 years to implement. So they have through August of 2024 to actually get these going. So definitely don't get your clients excited about it, because all you'll do is move sales from this year to next, or just make them go away entirely or go to the competition or whatever. So again, I don't know that these are worth chasing. There's a few companies that will take good advantage of these, but a lot of them won't. Like most of normal HVAC contractors, I don't really expect that.
And like years prior, it's probably going to go through utility providers and stuff like that too. So that's what we'll more than likely see, like 2008, right?
Yep. And we'll probably see some hucksters out there like, hey, look, you can save all this stuff. I mean, Jiminy, I don't pick up my phone anymore because of people hawking government programs fundamentally.
Experienced it myself, Nate.
Did you?
When they had some air sealing discounts, rebates, whatever they were giving. And prior to having to prove air leakage and reduction of leakage, they had trucks in the truck come in that were hitting neighborhoods and not doing anything but taking the money from the utility rebates, utility manufacturers.
So they were just getting homeowners to sign off or something?
Yeah, and then all you got to have is their account number. And then those utilities were actually paying the contractor at that point.
Who literally had done nothing, but somehow
had done nothing.
Gotten the account.
That's okay. The utility gets paid for that, and that's all they care about.
Exactly.
That's true. Yeah, there's some misaligned incentives with ratepayers and whatnot.
So in other words, we'll get to see 50 different ways of screwing this up royally. That's what
yes,
we'll see.
we are. Yes, we will.
And inevitably screwing the people.
But that's okay. That's good consumer or bad consumer experiences scale things up really easily and big, right? That's what we want to see is, negative PR. That's great, right? No such thing as bad publicity, right? Yeah. So if you want to get into the nitty gritty, back in October, I was on IAQ radio, which there's a ton of good stuff there. If you're in the HVAC world, listen to some of the building science folks. You can go down the other rabbit holes of mold remediation and so forth. Those guys are really fascinating and they're awesome human beings. I really like Joe and Cliff. So maybe worth taking a look. Okay. So that's the 3 programs. Let's talk about how to filter clients, because this is going to be one of the big challenges when somebody comes to you and says they want to take advantage of the IRA. So for starters, like I said early on, we pulled our first gas meter back in 2014. So we've been doing this for a while. And so we've learned a lot of the pros and cons, and then also the challenges of working with different types of clients. And the most fundamental thing that I can recommend to you if somebody comes to you looking for the IRA is figure out what their motivations are. They need something beyond climate, or else it's going to be a challenge.
Or a big budget.
Yeah, or they can have a bunch of money. I got $100,000. That does happen sometimes. I've got a client right now, although it's funny, I hit him with the budgets and he was like, whoa, I'm like, all right, well, so you can think about it. And if you want to keep going, we can. Really complicated, cool house in Montana. I told him it's probably going to be somewhere between 50 and 150, depending on what you choose for HVAC. And they want everything hidden, it's like complicated. There's just all kinds of crazy stuff going on. This is a good point from Tom Leck. Or Leak. I don't know exactly how you pronounce his last name. Too much paperwork can definitely happen. So this may be the case, or it may be easy. The federal one's probably going to be easy. You're probably just going to need to make sure that you provide an RE certificate. So motivations. This is the 4 questions from the comfort quiz. Which is part of HVAC 2.0. So parts of my house are uncomfortable or dry in winter, scale of 0 to 10. Parts of my house are uncomfortable or sticky in winter, scale of 0 to 10. There are health concerns in my home and family, such as allergies, asthma, mold, excessive dust, pests, chemical, or mold sensitivities. So these are long lists on purpose, trying to trigger things and make people think and surface various issues. And then there are moisture problems in my house, such as mold or mildew in the attic, basement or crawl space, overflowing gutters, standing water against the foundation, rotted wood, etc. These are not yes or no questions. These are scales. And these help you understand if there's other things that the client wants to deal with comfort-wise. And if there are, it's going to be a lot easier to work with them to get them a heat pump that they're going to be happy with and you're unlikely to get a bad review out of. If they don't have much in the way, Tim, that's you're stealing my line, dude. This isn't going to make things easier. It's going to make things harder. Yep. Let's.
That's what she was hoping for.
So in a sales transaction, you can either add friction or grease. I'm just walking right by that one right now. Friction or grease you can add. I don't see any way that this adds any grease. This is just pouring sand on the kitchen table transaction. Now, one question that you might add to this is, how important is personally reducing climate change to you on a scale of 1 to 10? And these are pain levels. The higher they are should correlate to budget. Although, frankly, I found that they don't. So now we're going to get into the next part, which is the realistic. Oh, one last thing. So the comfort quiz here, these 4 questions I showed you, these are made to be automated, where you can put them on your website and have clients ask them. You can have your CSR do it, technicians, if they're going to turn a service call to a bid, things like that. So those 4 questions are really useful. And they're the first step here, which is, are there comfort problems to solve? So you can basically put any client through this, and they will then triage themselves through this system. And you can responsibly avoid responsibility through this whole thing, because you're going to be offering them options and letting them know the risk and ramifications and costs of what you're doing. So this is an article that I wrote when I got mad back in, take a look at that date, 2016. We've been doing this for a while. I'm calling bullcrap on Greenies. And this was a story of, I had 5 different green leaning clients that were all like, yeah, let's do it. This is great. This is fantastic. Wait, how much? Never mind.
They weren't clients. They were prospects.
Yeah, you're right. They were prospects. One of which is a very famous writer in the climate space, who, after we figured out how to get him a heat pump for the same cost as what he already had budgeted for, we were going to delete some attic insulation work and then change the HVAC to a heat pump, even a basic one. It was in Seattle, so not a hard climate. We could do it for the same amount, but it was more work and more trouble. So he had a brand new gas line run to his house.
Yeah, the gas line was free, and there were all these incentives. And so he was getting so much more value by getting the gas line to his house and the gas furnace. And then didn't we have to listen to him complain about how shitty his house performed for the next 4 or 5 years?
Well, he definitely tweeted one time about, why is my house so cold when it's like 50 degrees outside? I'm like, because it's oversized. You got an 80,000 BTU furnace in a 1,600 square foot house in Seattle with a load of like 1.5 or 2 tons. I mean, right then you got like a 1 ton load maybe, and you got 70,000 BTUs of output.
But hey, you got to look on the bright side. It was a free gas line. Think about the incentives.
You got $2,000 off that furnace. So that was the thing, on top of some other stuff that just set me off, and I went and wrote this. So I was.
Oh my God! What a flaming asshole hypocrite! I mean, yeah. What a hypocrite that guy is.
It's very frustrating. I certainly couldn't read anything of his after that.
Oh my God, he was such a virtue signaler too, and so, like, the fact that he wouldn't even walk the talk.
I just imagine now, like he's writing on some new article telling people, you need to install heat pumps, you need to do this, you need to do that, and then the narrator pans out and goes, and then he continued sitting into his gas heated house as he tells everybody else what to do.
Hasn't Vice just gone bankrupt?
They did. That wasn't where he was. Anyway, we should move on from that one.
Okay,
all of those things. We can go off about this. This is very frustrating to work with, because we know how to actually do this and do this well and do it on a reasonable budget. And then, like, when you see this behavior repeated, it's frustrating. So here are the things that we see from climate-focused clients. So the first thing is, they love incentives. They love to chase free money, which is what we were just talking about. It was free money in the wrong direction in that case. Their budget expectations can be unrealistically low. I can get this for like $8,000, right? I can deliver the equipment and drop it in your driveway. It's a self-install. We find that about 75% are challenging to work with. So they just aren't really fun clients that you want. They tend to not leave great reviews. It can be hard. So it's not all, but 75%. If I'm a baseball player, I'm pretty damn good. So, I mean, that's enough that whenever I hear climate motivation is at the top of a client's goal list, I frankly get kind of vicious. Like, where were you Thursday at 6 p.m.?
The entitlement side of the entitlement versus gratitude scale.
Yes. Yeah, that can definitely be it. So there's not nearly enough gratitude there. And oftentimes there is a looking down on
condescending, entitled.
On blue collar. Yeah. It's white collar looking down on blue pretty often. So this can be a consistent challenge. So this is why we say filtration is so important. Emotion and fear are often their largest drivers, not necessarily comfort issues or other things going on. This is one of the things that absolutely kicks your butt, which we're going to talk about in a moment. They often come with incorrect third-party education. And if you challenge that education, it typically destroys trust.
Yeah, because they believe the people that told them the stuff and they won't believe you.
Exactly. So you're stuck. And now you're just a schmuck and you're a liar.
You look like the guy just trying to sell them something.
Again, goes on that white collar looking down on the blue collar.
And by the way, the responsibly avoiding responsibility part of our process makes that much less of a problem because I am happy to install according to your experts' specifications, so long as you hold that asshole responsible and not this one right here.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Or you yourself are responsible.
Or you yourself
for this.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you yourself are responsible and you can figure it out with who told you this if you want. But this is a consistent problem. And I learned this first from Joe Hughes of IAQ Radio years ago. I asked him, Joe, would you prefer an educated client or an uneducated one? And he said, actually, I really want an uneducated one because all the education out there is wrong. And it is way harder to try and re-educate than it is to educate them from scratch. And that stuck with me because I was thinking of education in a good way, and he was thinking of in the negative. And in this case, we're seeing a negative kind of education for the most part. So without care, you and the client will likely have a bad experience, and you're likely to get a bad review. And you'll probably lose money. Who wants these? Hands up. Show of hands. What's going on?
Where can I sign up?
So Reedy just had one of these this week. So Reedy, where are you? And tell us the story of this client.
All right, Nate, I am in Pinehurst, North Carolina. We got Aberdeen and Southern Pines. They surround us, several other communities. This fellow was in Pinehurst, and he called us out there. He said, he sat me down. He said, first things first, I want to get a HVAC system that's very efficient, that qualifies for the tax rebate. I do not want to spend top dollar. And I know that there's several that qualify. And so we'd already sent him the 4 questions, the comfort quiz. And he didn't bother to answer those questions. This person was really just interested in the $2,000. It was like a shiny thing. Not unlike the thing that you see on the screen to your left or your right, all this shiny stuff. He's been interested in shiny stuff before, and it hasn't worked, but he's interested in more shiny stuff. So in any event, these pictures right here, they show his ductwork. The first one on the left-hand side is held up with a piece of PVC. That's not a proper duct hanger. The next one in the middle, it's got a hole in it that somebody put tape on. You can't see it, but that tape is plastic. It's not even metal tape. And then the third one, that's a return header, and it leaks directly to the outside. So if you take the third picture and the second picture, you've got one that blows. That's the second one. The other that sucks. This is not good ventilation. This is just air that's being blown out of the house and air that's being sucked into the house that isn't really conditioned at all. As I told him, the observations. I have a list of things that I always write down, observations, and the observations that I made were that he had a 4-ton in a 1,600 square foot house, which is wildly oversized. If he would have let me done the blower door, we could have known that for certain. He didn't let me do that. He didn't want to do anything, but he was satisfied with what he had. So we told him about the duct system, how bad a shape it's in, told him that the crawl space, even though that vapor barrier looks good right there's places where there's water on top of it. The insulation isn't good. You can't really see it, but it's R7 insulation in the floors. And so, he had a series of things that just weren't good. He was the customer that was all he was emotionally attached by was the money. He was afraid to spend any more money. He was driven by that $2,000. He wasn't driven by comfort, even though he voiced to me that there were times that his house was dusty. He wasn't driven by anything but that money. When we talked, we went through it. There's a few that come up that qualify for that tax credit. I recommended to him that he change his duct system. He put in a variable capacity communicating system. That was my second line recommendation. This was that he does a comfort consult and we find out the truth. He didn't take either of those. He went for the cheapest of the cheap, and it was still capable. I advised him it may not dehumidify as well. He said he didn't care. He said, when we get to that, we'll deal with that when we get to it. Well, if you look at that duct system, you can see he's not going to deal with nothing, because that dehumidifier ain't going to do anything for him because he's conditioning the underside of his house. This
now,
dude,
to be clear, Rudy, this looks like it may be an encapsulated crawl space. Is it?
Yeah, but it is not an encapsulated crawl space. This is wide open. You can't really see any of the piers or anything. It's not put up. It's not sealed up. It's just a piece of vapor barrier laying on the ground is all it is. No dehumidifier, no sealing on the floors or the rim joists or the door or the foundation vents. It's all wide open. And
is it vented?
It is vented. It is completely vented to the outside. And so he's got major problems, but he's chasing after this big 2,000, just like your gas pipe guy for the free gas pipe. He's chasing after it, and his house is not going to feel good. And I've done my best to responsibly avoid responsibility. I documented every bit of this, that he didn't answer the questions, that he didn't want to do a comfort consult, that he didn't want to do anything but get that. And you know what? We put it in today. I don't know what the outcome is because I've been back there, but today they put that thing in, and so I guess we'll see something soon. But
so you sold it?
You don't want? Yeah, I did.
I sold it.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's certain people that may think that it's not good to sell it.
A-path, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like for like. I mean, there are certain people that would say it's not good to sell it, but the key is it was his specification. You know what we do, Nate? One of the things that we do is we do a likely load range. He's got a 4-ton right there right now. He didn't give me his electric bill, so I couldn't do it. I went as low as I could see that it would reasonably go, which is 2.2 tons. And I went as high as I could see that it was 4 tons. I gave him the range. I said, okay, you pick. What do you want to do? You want to go 2 tons? You want to go 4? He goes, I think we should go 3. I said, I think that's fine. And so we put a 3-ton in there, and that's that.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
look at the corner. Look at the guy in the corner. That's it. It looks good to me.
Yep. So basically when you set up these poor goals like this, you're creating pain, but then all you're doing is you're offloading it onto the homeowner, and then you're making it a game of, okay, who's going to have to deal with this pain to overcome this? And so
Yeah.
the question then to us as contractors is, do we plan on putting on a cape and pretend like we're a nonprofit and then go in and start just giving people free stuff at the price that they would like so they can get these tax incentives? Or are we going to treat them like an adult, just like Reedy did in this situation, and go, okay, well, I mean, we can do this thing that you're asking me of, but is it okay if things don't pan out and then we have to then spend more money to remedy any potential issues? You're not going to be mad at me if that happens, are you? And you have to go about it in that way to be able to
It is a problem, Tanner. I'm going to be very mad at you as the client for this. So now what do we do?
Well, I'm afraid we have a problem. What do you think we should do? Should we continue on, or do you think we should do a little bit more investigating? You think it's worth spending a little more money?
Or are we done?
Exactly. They're the ones that's about to spend the money. It's their choice. It's their decision. It's your job just to give them the options that they need in order to make that choice, regardless of what it is.
I love this line from Mark Twain that Abby popped up. It ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
Yeah.
You know, the temptation with these kind of calls for most service technicians or even HVAC companies as a whole is just to be the hero and say, I can do it and make it work no matter what. And the problem is that when you're being a hero about stuff, what you're doing is you're putting your heroship in the wrong place. If you're going to be a hero, you should be a hero to yourself, to your family, your wife, your children. That's who you should be a hero to, not some guy who lives a miserable life who's just trying to go out here and screw the government for $2,000. That's it.
Tell me how you really feel, Reedy. But that's key. Our job here is to be their guide. We're going to help them play choose your own adventure, but instead of choose your own adventure where you make choices blindly and hope, we help guide them which path is likely better. And every time they make a choice, they own more and more of the responsibility for that choice. But yeah, I look at this one, I'm like, the duct leakage on this is easily going to add a ton to the load of this house. But he's not interested in addressing that. Like you found it on a free quote, which is going above and beyond.
And that in itself is going to cause problems because, I mean, there's certain equipment you can choose that's going to ramp down the blower speed and it's going to make that ductwork really cold. And you put that into a vented crawl space, and something that may not have condensed and sweated very much beforehand is going to be a rainforest down there. Well, then what happens? You've got this nice, pretty vapor barrier that's going to catch and hold every bit of that. Now what happens? Whose fault's that?
So I think next week we will talk about sensible heat ratios, which we'll get into here in a minute as well. But we'll go look at some different things because one of the systems in one of our houses before I got the basement figured out right, it was just coated with droplets of water underneath. I've never seen so much moisture underneath. So I'll show a picture of that.
Hey, Nate, before you go to the next slide, there's something on the last slide, the previous one, the upper corner where you had the app.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where
we're coming to that.
Okay. If you ask a big box store, what size do we need? What's the outcome going to be?
Bigger.
Oversized. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Tim Allen method. That doesn't do anything to static, and motors don't have, or fans don't have ECMs now, do they? That are very sensitive to high static pressure and burn things up and eat up other parts of the equipment. No, there's no problems here. Looks good to me.
Yep. I found on the internet I need a 5-ton system. Don't tell me I need something else.
Yes, don't worry, just put a true flow on it. It'll say it's fine.
Yeah.
So speaking of reading it on the internet, this is the worst offender out there right now. So this is a calculator from an organization called Rewiring America. And they are pumping the Inflation Reduction Act rebates like crazy. And like they're pushing the 14 grand, which we don't even know whether it's going to show up, what it's going to look like. It's still months, if not a year down the road. So if you ask clients, hey, where do you learn about stuff? And they see rewiring, be really careful. And they are aware of my feelings on this because I swore at them up one side and down the other on Twitter a couple months ago of a screenshot that I'm going to show in a minute. But here is the curse of this. Rewiring is viewed as a trusted third-party authority So you're unlikely to be able to convince clients of anything that conflicts with their messaging. I've been watching all of their messaging. Guess how many pieces of their messaging I will send to anyone that I know? Goose egg. There's absolutely nothing, because it all ends up referring to this calculator or laying groundwork in an incorrect way, which is going to make it really hard for us at the kitchen table to actually fix.
And so a simple way to also think about this is everyone, especially if you're a tech, you've been in the situation to where you've went out to somebody's house and they're like, yeah, we want to know what's going on with their system. You find out there's a problem and you start to tell them, and then they interrupt you and go, well, actually, my cousin, neighbor's dog, he's actually a mechanic part-time, and he said that it's blah, blah, blah. And that situation of when you have to go, okay, I know what's true right now and I know what's factual, but the game of me trying to convince this person that the person that they know is wrong is a losing battle. So now imagine that every single time you have to deal with someone that's wanting to buy equipment and they're chasing these incentives. It's the same scenario.
And particularly if you're jamming a heat pump in without a really good load calc. I mean, you really need to understand your duct sizing, what the house actually needs. Like, you really want to have more information, particularly if you're looking at a full electrification. So, like, careful. But what we're seeing here is they're giving inflated incentive expectations and deflated price expectations. So one report, and this is the one that I totally lost my crap, was they suggested $7,500 for an installed cold climate heat pump. I have one sitting in my shed in Ohio that just the equipment was $7,000. Ain't nobody putting that in for $500.
Not many people's going to install the basic, builder's grade equipment for $7,500. Much less.
We don't even have anything.
Yeah, exactly. Most people want. You're going to have a few chuck in the trucks who, they will do it like dirt cheap, but
and then it'll break.
There's a reason that they do it that cheaply. You got to start cutting corners. You got to take stuff out. Maybe they don't quite need the good stuff here. They don't really need that. Who really needs to insulate that part? It'll be okay. You get those types of situations. Now, imagine that for your higher end equipment. It doesn't even make any sense.
No bueno. So I'm hopeful that the messaging will improve, but it hasn't yet. And it has been a couple of months. So like this got me on a podcast for a couple of episodes, and it got me a number of media interviews because I lost it on them. But I said, you guys are screwing those of us in the field. You're laying expectations we don't have a prayer of ever meeting, and we can't change them because you are the trusted arbiter. And so we're just stuck. Like, you're destroying the actual chance of this stuff getting sold and installed in a way that gives both sides a good experience. And if we don't have good experiences, we don't get referrals. We don't get natural scale. Then we have to spend more on marketing, but we don't have money for marketing on the electrification side. So it's really, really bad. Here's the one. So this created a conversation, but take a look at this. 2025. Installing a ducted mini split heat pump to replace the propane furnace for $7,500, and they get a $7,500 rebate. Is this an expectation that you want to deal with? I don't. And how are you going to talk them out of this? You're done. Like, you may break the bar and tell them they're crazy. There's no way in hell that's going to happen, but they're probably going to have to go 2 or 3 contractors further deep before they actually believe, oh no, that can't happen. And maybe they get up to maybe a remotely profitable number. But meanwhile, we have 3 contractors who are like, look at that punk. There's no way in heck I ever want to work for them. So now we're making contractors who in general don't like the idea of heat pumps, and we're making them really not like heat pumps or the people that are asking for them. So be careful with rewiring. Like, I hate to do this, but this is just so freaking wrong. Like, I gotta call a spade a spade. This
1999 called. They want their prices back.
Could you even get in that night? Well, I mean, a single stager. You weren't getting an inverter. This equipment didn't exist. Or if it did, it was the 0.1 static stuff, which you couldn't actually use anymore.
Yeah. This is what happens when you get a group of morons together and you say, hey, we want you to go find something that you've never done and you have zero understanding of, and we want you to put a plan together for us.
Make some rules.
And we want it to seem as though a group of kindergartners could do better. And they went, we got you, fam. Came back, bam, this is what we got. It's like, oh, great.
Unfortunately, the structure of this thing is so bad. I talked to one of the people that worked on writing this, and they're like, okay, so blue sky, magic wand, do whatever you want. What would you do? And I'm like, delete it. It's a bad structure. You just built a building that has a bad foundation. Your options are replace the foundation or tear the building down and rebuild. Those are your options. This is a bad structure. Don't do anything downstream that affects the kitchen table. We've been watching programs for a decade in the home performance world. A good one that is downstream that affects the kitchen table does not exist that we have seen thus far, and we've looked at a lot. And this is a downstream program, but that's okay because now it's federal with a giant budget, and we're stuck with it for a decade. Yay! Ask me how I really feel.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to screw things up.
Use the comfort quiz to filter people here. So this is the 4 questions. Do you have any hot rooms, cold rooms, things like that? Again, this is built into the program that we built. We haven't been pushing it yet because we're doing some final polishes on it, but it's really, really close. This is an automated way to filter people and understand. If they get a low score and they want a heat pump, think about your pricing very hard. So this all goes back to bad experiences don't scale. And the IRA is likely to set up a bunch of bad experiences for both contractors and homeowners. And it reminds me a lot of 80s diesels. So my dad had a diesel Tornado, Oldsmobile Tornado, and then he got a diesel Chevy Dually 1983 that if he could have sent that thing into the sun, he would have done it multiple times. That thing pulling a car trailer over the Rocky Mountains was doing 7 miles an hour on I-70, floored. That's all it would do. It had no power. It was a poor engineering job. And so those diesels hurt the view of Americans of diesels for decades afterwards. This program, the way that it's structured, is likely to do the same thing. Hopefully it will be a much smaller scale, but that's what it's likely to do. I tried to stop it, guys. Sorry. Okay, what equipment qualifies? So we're getting there, and then we'll get to questions. So CEE, this is oh shoot, no, I can't think of it. The Consortium for Energy Efficiency. And this is different for northern and southern climates. This is kind of a new way that they have flipped things. There's always been kind of northern and southern. I think there were 3 different zones before, and now there's 2. And so the requirements are different. So Jeff, you want to talk about the northern climate ones?
Yeah, so northern climate, for cold climate heat pumps, there's a few qualifications it's going to have to meet, or there's a few things it's going to have to meet to be qualified, and that's 15.2 CR2. One big one that I look at too is the 8.1 HSPF2. A lot of people don't consider what that heating performance is there, but it also has to have either 70% output capacity at 5 degrees, or that 58% at that 17 to 47. Or at 17 degrees Fahrenheit, right?
Yep. They've got to have a pretty good split. So they need to put out at 17, at least 58% of what they do at 47. So there's different equipment that's rated different ways. So they did an OR in this case.
And one thing that gets people that I've seen is that HSPF2. So, and of course, that's going to correlate with that output at that 5 degrees.
Yep. So this isn't that difficult. When it first came out, it was, well, the bill is pegged to the top tier of CEE, which used to be 18 SEER, which getting to an 18 SEER RE match on 3, 4, and 5 ton equipment requires 20 SEER equipment. So you're absolute top of the line to be able to get it. And I'm like, well, that sucks if that's the case. So this is a little bit better on that front. Now in the south,
oversizing coils.
You can get to that in a minute. Yeah, you got to run big honking coils to do that. So the system that I have sitting in Ohio has the baby coil. Doesn't qualify, nor does that piece of equipment anymore. We did half of our electrifications with that piece of equipment. Doesn't qualify.
Same here. Yep.
And same here.
5-stage
You
carrier
qualify,
infinity.
Tanner.
Nice piece of equipment.
Not the equipment I got.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Tanner, you're going to get one, but you're getting the smaller coil, right?
Yeah. Well, I have a 280. I'm going to install a 284 Bryant, which is the green speed.
You get it.
3-ton, but with a 2-ton indoor coil. So I just kind of like grabbed the rule book and I threw it out the window and said, "Piss on y'all. I'm looking for humidity control."
Icy cold coils. What you're looking for there? You're in Alabama. Yeah. You don't have any humidity.
No.
So the southern tier, you don't have to worry about the capacity ratios. And this is on RE now. So if you look up RE and CEE, this should come up. I put the link here. Again, I will drop these links in the video description once we're done. So you can go look at this. There is a big honking list of stuff that qualifies. So it looks like it's all Lennox. It looks like it's all Lennox for a while. There's like 10 pages of Lennox before you get to another manufacturer. But there are a bunch of different combos that you can do. These top couple didn't have RE numbers. And you're probably, I definitely wouldn't recommend doing anything that doesn't have an RE match if you don't want to get in trouble for that $2,000. Because if you put in something and it doesn't qualify, what's that client going to do? They're going to come back to you for the pound of flesh.
How many of them actually have that number in there? I haven't seen many in there yet.
There were a bunch further down.
Okay. So they're starting to add them.
I didn't try to estimate how much, but I don't know, call it half.
Okay. Like so they're starting to add them. I mean, I can remember when the list was really small, like you said, months ago.
Yeah. Until a couple of weeks ago, this list had 5 products on it. And they were all mini split outdoor units paired with dumb American air handlers. So it was basically single or 2-stage. And their sensible heat ratio was awful, which is what we're getting to next. So pay a lot of attention to sensible heat ratios as you're doing this. So there is a very high risk of dehumidification challenges. So we've got different things going on. So if you want to hit a high SEER 2, you need the largest indoor coil in most cases to get there. You need, if you're going to size the heating load, which in electrification is definitely the direction that things go, if you size double what cooling load is, what happens to your dehumidification? It tanks. And then the lowest cost equipment, Reedy, it is typically a mini split outdoor unit with a dumb indoor. And so they bias it to really good cold temperature performance. But if you can't vary indoor fan speed in a communicating manner, you can't get good dehumidification and good cold temperature performance, to my knowledge. If someone wants to prove me wrong on that, show me a product, please. I'd love to know, but I haven't seen it yet. And I've experienced it here. I have a Bosch in this house, and this house doesn't dehumidify. My dehumidifier frequently uses more power than my air conditioner. So it's a good thing I have a 20 SEER heat pump.
Yeah. Well, and it also comes down to chasing those higher SEER ratings, because it's very well known that the higher in SEER, the worse the dehumidification. And the reason for it is because the efficiency is based on your compression differences on your low and high side. And so the idea is you want to balance those two out as much as possible. Well, to dehumidify, it's going to do this. And so for some of these dumb equipment, you have units that are going to run really high indoor temperatures. So that way that compression ratio is a lot less. Therefore, it can move heat at a more efficient rate. You get those ratings, you get onto the incentive spreadsheet. So that way you can sell more of your units. So where are we gearing towards? Where are we gearing our things towards?
Yep. Yeah, this is going to be a challenge. So keep an eye on this. There is one out. This is a serious CYA on every single bid. And I'd recommend this from here forward if you are in a humid climate, which is 80% of Americans. Offer a ventilating dehumidifier as an offer decline. Have clients sign off that they don't want it, but make sure that it's on there.
And let them know that it's okay to come back and put it in later.
Yep.
They just need to know that that option exists. It's there and it's ready for them whenever they decide to get it.
Yep. And you might also want to mention, though, that these have 4 to 6 year warranties on them, where most central equipment has a 10-year warranty. And that gives you an idea of what the lifespan might be. So you're probably going to buy 2 of them. So the thing that's annoying here is, Reedy, your client's going to save $2,000 on that piece of equipment that he just bought, but then he's probably going to pay you 6 to 10 for a dehu, and then it's going to break in 8 years, and he's going to pay you 6 to 10 grand again for a dehu. So it's a good thing he saved that $2,000 so he could spend 12 to like 20.
Oh no, maybe in 8 years, because the IRA will still be going on, maybe he'll get smart.
Buy another system, get his $2,000 again. You
Maybe.
get $2,000 every year, do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's the game. You just start chasing these incentives to where you just replace your equipment every year and just get $2,000 every year.
Every year, just keep
It'll be
rolling
great.
over.
All you got to do is spend $20,000 a year. That's all you got to do.
What are you going to give me on this trade-in? Give you $100. All right. So here is one way to offer IRA equipment. So this is pulling from the very soon to be released free quote process in 2.0. So these are what we call the 6 functions: load matching. So this requires variable speed. It needs to be pretty well sized. Dehumidification, mixing, filtration, fresh air, and humidification. So these are the 6 functions of HVAC. Basic equipment, this is single stage. Nothing fancy about it. Load matching, it sucks because it's going to be oversized, kind of regardless of what you do. Dehumidification, probably going to be mediocre. Now we're to 15 SEER requirements, so it's pretty much for sure going to be mediocre, and you're probably going to oversize it. Mixing is just okay because it's probably an X13, so running the fan all the time may be expensive, particularly if it's a high static system. Filtration, this is assuming that you keep a 1-inch filter, and fresh air isn't there. So this is your basic setup.
And keep in mind, this is on a free quote.
Yeah, this is a free quote. Exactly. So you're giving people options. But one thing you could do for the IRA equipment, like Reedy, what you just offered and what he bought, load matching is just going to be okay because they function as 1 or 2 stage. Dehumidification is abysmal because they're typically running sensible heat ratios between 0.9 and 1 when you really need somewhere 0.7 to 0.8 for most homes to actually keep them dry. Mixing, it's probably an X13 on that as well. Filtration is probably better. Hopefully you're doing a 4-inch, but maybe you're keeping the 1-inch, and there's no fresh air. So this is what the offer would look like. It's like, but you can save $2,000, at least on the bottom end, and maybe better and best you choose something that qualifies for IRA. But again, pay attention to your coil sizes and your sensible heat ratios. Pay very close attention to those. Those are the biggest issue we have had in electrifications, and we've been doing this for a decade almost now, is dehumidification challenges. That is hands down the hardest thing we have dealt with. We got strip heat. I've never had anybody have their temperature slide when they used a little bit of resistance. And then even when resistance is locked out, people usually don't slide very much. So heating is not a problem. You can get her done. Dehumidification, if you run a house wet for too long, people are going to be sick and the homes are going to get sick too. So this is a real serious thing that we're looking at. But on the IRA offer, you can point out, hey, look, this may be a cheap piece of equipment that qualifies. So if somebody else is offering you this is fine. But I want you to be aware that this is here, and we will offer you a separate dehumidifier, which is going to cost way more than the $2,000 you're getting off. And next week we'll talk about dehumidification because our favorite unit that has reheat in it, it doesn't qualify in northern climates anymore, and that's a real bummer because that unit just got $2,000 more expensive, so it's going to be that much harder to sell moving forward. So that's a bummer, and you have to run with that big coil. But this is one way that you can offer equipment. And speaking of offering, this is what we're big on: offer and decline, or responsibly avoiding responsibility. So if you give people options and you let them know the ramifications and you give them the prices and they choose, they are owning things.
Yeah. And so really what's going to happen, especially for people like us, is you're going to have these homeowners, they're going to call and they're going to be like, hey, we're trying to get this $2,000. Can you help me? And we're going to have to go through and basically show them what they just seen before in the previous slide of like, hey, like you can do this, but just so you know, you may have to either go buy yourself a few portable dehumidifiers and put one in each room, or you're going to have to get a whole house dehumidifier. Like these are possibilities. Are you okay with that? And then in people that are just gung ho, oh yeah, I read it online. There was this Rewiring America. It said this is what's going to happen, and it can't be wrong. They're going to install this equipment, and then they're not going to be happy. They're going to be like, why is my humidity high? I never had these problems before. And so then through the action of trying to push heat pumps on people and trying to make heat pumps seem amazing, you're doing it in the worst way possible, to where all you're going to do is make people now hate heat pumps, because they're going to be like, oh, the first one that I ever had was absolutely terrible. And then us as contractors are going to be in this middle ground of basically going, okay, well, are we going to just take the brunt and get bit left and right? Or are we going to treat them like adults and go, hey, just so you know, you may be making a bad decision here. You're not going to blame me for that, are you? And you're going to have to treat them like that, and they'll buy it or they won't, or they'll go to the next guy and then he'll sell it to them, and then they'll get a crappy install because he can't even put it in right and he doesn't even know how to spell heat pump. And now it's not even going to work from day one. And then after months of working on it and spending even more money and getting it back running, they're going to be like, oh, now it doesn't even work great. Nice. Keeps life interesting. But offer and decline is a good way to avoid some of these issues. And like this here, this grid, this is offer decline right here. If you choose this, you're giving up smiley faces in these other 6. Whoop. Okay, so more detail. Again, there's the IAQ radio episode, which I will put in the video link shortly. I annotated the bill. I pulled out the sections and I made annotations. So that's something there. Are you laughing at this one comment here? I'll put it up in a second. And the CEE listing on ARI, I'll put that up. This is, I love plays on wood, words there. Plays on wood. There you go. Plays on words, whatever. So Dylan, that was funny. That's full yeet. The full yeet pump, maybe. That's your competitor right there. Yeah, we put in them heat pumps. I do them all the time.
I just helped a client in Chicago. They put the heat pump in with no legs.
Ooh. Guaranteed it'll freeze the coil, split it, lose the refrigerant.
Go back to Reedy's slide. Looks good to me.
Right? Looks good from Ohio.
So I'll mention one thing that could actually work and be useful and not make our lives so hard, which is if we just change all ACs to heat pumps, because fundamentally they're the same piece of equipment. Heat pump just has a couple extra parts. You get a reversing valve and a defrost board, those sorts of things. There's not that much difference between them. It's a pain to retrofit, but it's not that hard to do at the manufacturer. It's $100, $200 in parts, something like that. Might be more thanks to supply chain challenges now. This would be a lot simpler, because basically all air conditioners would become heat pumps and the OEMs would get paid to change it over, but it's voluntary. And so this would be a funded voluntary change rather than a future unfunded mandate, which is likely to come within the next decade. I don't know how exactly it's going to work, but it's likely to come. So at least OEMs could have an easier thing. So this is called the Heater Act. And my friend and co-author on the Hybrid Heat Homes paper, Alexander Gard-Murray, and I wrote this about a year ago, and we're working on a second version now. I can't say much more than that yet. But this is a much simpler thing, so that we don't have all of these other things. It's just, if you go to the supply house, they've got heat pumps on the shelf. So the first year will be a little bit interesting while we get used to thermostats and things like that, and they'll have some weird warranty calls. But we'll get through the first year or two, and everybody will know what they're doing, and everybody will get familiar with these. And this will actually move the market instead of adding a ton of friction. This is, by the way, called an upstream program. So this is done at manufacturer level. Midstream is distributor level. Downstream is consumer. So this is another option. So we'll see what happens. And just to reiterate key takeaways, and then we'll get to questions. Filter leads to understand their motivations. State programs probably aren't worth chasing. It's not 14 grand in incentives. It's really 2 per year. And cover your butt on dehumidification. So hopefully that all makes sense now.
Yeah, and one more thing I'd also like to add, if you'll go back one slide, where it talks about filtering the leads to understand their motivations. Here's another thing. If somebody, like you mentioned before, the Greenies, they tend to not really want to spend money to do the things that they claim that they want to do. That still holds true. So even if they're trying to chase these incentives, if you can be really good at just asking questions and really getting to their motivations, and maybe you can uncover of them going, oh, well, I've got all these other pains that I have with my house. You know, it makes me sick. I've got seasonal allergies, hot and cold rooms, blah, blah, blah. But I seen this incentive of getting $2,000 with a heat pump, and I thought I could just knock out all these things at once. If that's their root thought process, and you can take the focus from the $2,000 to their pains, and then you can kind of put them in a situation to go, hey, like, if these problems are really a problem, well, would you rather focus on those, or would you rather get the $2,000? If it was a one or the other, which one's more important? You'll find that they'll go, oh, well, I mean, if I don't get the $2,000 tax credit, but I can fix these problems, let's do that. And then that's one method of, you can really, take that, I mean, it's just kind of like a bad fruit you're just tearing out of them to go, okay, let's focus on what's truly there and what we can actually work with. Yeah. And so looking at their motivations and what the actual pains are is a real key. And you got to do that early on. This is something you can't do at the presentation stage. You've skipped too many compartments. You got to stay in your compartment, make it step by step, and then you can, really avoid some of these pitfalls that this is really bringing for us.
Is there a process that might help automate doing this?
I've heard of one, but
3.0 something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the comfort consult you're talking about there. Uncover what bothers them. That's really important. And then you also collect the information that you need, the blower door for doing a better load calc, their previous energy use to do a better load calc, what set points they have. Some people are hot, some people are cold. That can affect your loads. You get to see the house and get an idea of the shell. Yeah, your risk of failure with a heat pump install is way lower through a comfort consult.
Yeah. But you also are doing it at the 4 questions as well. And this is just kind of something I just thought about. Maybe a good question to ask, look at those 4 questions and rip it off and start using it. And then if someone brings that up, go, okay, well, you gave me a score of blank of these 4 questions we talked about. Is that more important, or is just getting this $2,000 more important? Is it okay to keep the same problems or even make those problems worse to get 2,000, or would you rather it be vice versa?
Yep. Yeah. So you help uncover, and then you help act as their guide. And now hopefully you can begin to actually overcome that education that was incomplete or incorrect.